evening. Tonight for my first speech, I'd like to speak about one of the most decorated Marines in history, Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone. How would you feel about having part of the Interstate 5 named after you? Or 2 U.S. naval battleships named after you? Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone will always be known as a hero. One of the biggest heroes in American history. One of the most decorated Marines of all time. Today I'm going to inform you on the life of Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone. I'm going to discuss where he came from, a little bit about his family, his time in the service, as well as the honors that have been bestowed upon him after his death. First I'd like to discuss his childhood. Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone was born November 4th, 1916 in Buffalo, New York. He was the 6th out of 10 children. His parents were immigrants, or Italian immigrants. After completing junior high, John dropped out of school and never returned. He worked as a local gold caddy until 1934 when he enlisted in the United States Army. He spent 4 years in the Army, with most of that time being in the Philippines, where he was given the nickname Manila John. According to allthat'sinteresting.com. During his time in the Army, John became an accomplished boxer. John was discharged from the Army, and then some years later, he enlisted in the Marine Corps. He enlisted in the Marine Corps, hoping to go back to the Philippines. But that's not what was planned for John. John's Marine unit was sent to combat, and they found themselves on a dirty island named Guadalcanal. Now, Guadalcanal was an important part of World War II in the Pacific Theater. Both the Japanese and the Americans wanted it because of the small airstrip that was on Guadalcanal. The Americans took it and held control of it, but the Japanese Army wanted it back. On October 25th, 1942, Gunnery Sergeant Basilone found himself in placing a couple machine gun teams, as well as a third machine gun team with himself. They met with fierce resistance and firefights from the Japanese soldiers. Throughout the next three days, John Basilone killed approximately 38 Japanese soldiers. And at one point, his Marines started falling short on ammunition and other supplies. John Basilone picked up 90 pounds worth of ammunition and other armory and ran through enemy fire to resupply his fellow Marines. 3 days without sleep, without food, and carrying a machine gun in his arms. He fought. And after that third day, when he was reinforced, the Marines that came to reinforce him found Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone and only 2 other Marines alive. John Basilone was awarded the Medal of Honor for this. The Medal of Honor is the highest award a military man or woman can earn. That's according to explorethearchive.com. When John was finished with combat, he came back to the United States when he was given his award. He then went on a war bond trip doing public relations for the Marine Corps. John found fame, a lot of it. But this wasn't John. This was not what John Basilone was about. After some time going on the war bond trip, John wanted to go back to what he knew best, going out and doing Marine stuff. John requested to go back to Camp Pendleton, where soon after he returned to Camp Pendleton, he met his future wife, Nina Riggi, who they married 6 months later. Then it came time for John's unit to go back to Okinawa, or back to battle. John was given the option to stay, but he felt a sense of duty. And he felt he needed to be with his boys. So back to war John went. On February 19th, 1945, John's unit found themselves on the black volcanic sand island named Iwo Jima. John and his men fought their way up the shore. John single-handedly destroyed Japanese pillboxes with grenades and other demolitions. While John was guiding a tank through a minefield, a mortar round landed near him and the shrapnel killed him. For his actions on Iwo Jima, John was awarded the Navy Cross. Navy Cross is the Marine Corps' highest decoration after the Medal of Honor. John Basilone was awarded both the Medal of Honor and Navy Cross. I've heard stories about him. I spent 9 years in the Marine Corps and heard nothing but stories about him. He's a legend, and he's almost mythical. The fact that he was awarded both the Medal of Honor and Navy Cross is unheard of. He died young, but he lives on in numerous ways. In 1945, a destroyer is named after him, the USS Basilone. And in September every year, in his hometown of Raritan, New Jersey, they have Basilone Day. Stretch of I-5 in Pendleton is named after him. Numerous roads and buildings throughout the Marine Corps are named after him. Today I told you about one of the bravest men I've ever read about. I've informed you one of the most decorated and honored men in history, American history. In my time in the Marine Corps, I spent time on Camp Pendleton, the same place where John Basilone was stationed. And I've heard numerous stories of him and all the honors that have been bestowed upon him. And I'd like to end this with a quote, John Basilone. Without the Corps, he said this to his brother, without the Corps, I am nothing. All that's at Chichin.com. Thank you.